decision. I'll face the sunny side head on. I had a vision of what it might be like.
What's up, everybody? We have our special guest episode today. We have two beautiful girls in studio, Amanda Lifford and Ann Maddox from We Signed an NDA podcast.
Yes, hi.
Which is so cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, girls, for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Don't you guys hate taking the high road and not having to, not being able to really talk about like what you really want to say because you had to sign an NDA?
I thought you meant the 101 because that's how I got here.
I was like,
I guess it is a little higher.
The air quality is bad, as my Alexa would tell me.
Yeah.
Today. Yeah.
There's a lot of traffic talk on this show.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like, and then I had to take the 405. People make fun of us for being like that SNL.
The Californians.
Yeah. But it's
Yeah.
it is a big part of living in LA for sure.
Yeah.
Like, you cater your day to traffic.
Yes,
Right.
totally. And I think to your point about like the actual like, you know, metaphorical high road, like I think I'm pretty anxious. So I think if I'm doing something that feels in any way like below board, like it just like stresses me out. My parents are both saints, and so I think I've just like kind of had this like ingrained like just the way that they behave in the world, even though I'm nowhere near as good a person as them. Like I do
Right.
think that's just kind of like the way I go through stuff. So I think it's like it's it's the way we aspire to treat people, and also it make me really scared.
Yeah. I'm very much controlled by like fear-based like worries and you know, like lawyers, people with more money, ex-bosses coming
Totally.
after you. Too scary. So.
I feel like your podcast is probably the wrong vehicle for you then, because
I like living on the edge. It's a double-edged sword.
Let's do a medium that's based on us blabbing.
yeah, exactly. Okay, so Anne,
Yeah.
you were Tom Sandoval's assistant, personal assistant. Then you were briefly Ariana's,
No.
or you still are,
So
or you just interviewed.
No, that too, but I now work for Something About Her.
Right.
The sandwich shop.
So you did interview on Vanderpump Rules
Yes.
to be Ariana's
Yeah.
assistant.
Yeah.
But did you not get the job?
No. They
No, Your Honor.
What happened was,
Hence the sandwich shop.
Ariana hired me to work for Something About Her company with Katie. And I do like a tiny bit of social media, customer relations. I like, you know, communicate with questions that people like send in. Do you have gluten-free bread? Yes, we do. And then I sometimes pop in the shop, help out wherever I can. Just like regular assistant duties there. So
Okay, so be honest.
Yes.
Is it a real job?
It's a real job.
Or is it like
Yes.
for the show?
I mean, I think it's a real job. I think I'm getting paid. I hope I'm getting paid. Yeah.
I mean, like you don't go in like all the like every. Do you
I
go
do
somewhere
work
every day?
mostly remote.
Okay.
Yeah. So I get to, it's mostly like an internet job. So that's very nice for me. Yeah. I have like, it's flexible hours. I think, Ariana is very supportive of like my acting and improv and comedy stuff. So she like, they found a position for me where I could work remotely most of the time, which is nice.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. And Amanda, you were Nick Viall from The Bachelor, the Viall Files. You weren't his assistant, but you were like worked for the show. And for him.
Yeah, sort of like sidekick.
Yes.
Like I guess I don't know. I would say in some regards, by the end, like co-host kind of
Yeah,
thing, in the sense that I got
would
to
say.
participate in interviews and like ask questions and whatnot.
Yeah, I was a fan.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, I always agreed with your takes.
Oh,
on
thank
things.
you.
Yeah, no, I did. And I feel like it must have been a little bit difficult sometimes being the only one or being the one that would push back.
Yeah, I think it was like, I mean, the Bostonian me is like, come at me. Like, yeah, Boston versus world. Everybody hates us, but we're still going to win this one. So, like, I think there is a part of me that's pretty spirited and doesn't feel super intimidated. Like, I think ideologically, I didn't feel like I love different viewpoints, and it was cool being like, okay, like if it's fine if I'm the only one who's like saying this, I still believe it, and I'm happy to like engage with it. And I think we had some really interesting discussions. I do think, of course there's like this professional element of like, I'm I'm having a kind of a debate with a superior. And so I think there was a lot of like nuance in how to do that effectively. And so I think I learned a ton about like, how do you have conversations in a way that like doesn't shut the conversation down, but actually like how do you actually like disagree on something and continue to talk about it? Because I think so often it's like, well, we disagree. And then it's like, okay, but
yes,
where do you go from there?
Right.
Totally. Yeah. We love a yes and.
We do love a yes and.
Or but. Like kind of sometimes.
Yes, and but.
Yeah. And also, I hear you. Yes. Also, and then it's something that's totally diametrically opposed to what they just said. Yes. Also, no, not at all.
Totally.
Yeah. Did you have times where you pushed back and then left and felt anxious? Like, oh, did I push it too far? Is he mad?
I don't know.
I've just been in that situation a million times with jobs where I'm just like, oh, did I push too hard with what I think?
Welcome to being a woman.
Being a woman, I was just going to say it's really hard as a woman to not come. You know what I mean?
I feel like
there's a fine line.
That definitely is. That feeling is there of like, oh, I don't want to be like the bitchy one in the office. So, like I feel like the privilege of being a man is that no one's going to really like see you as like the bitchy person. Like you're just saying your feelings. Whereas like being a woman, it's like, oh, I hate that. Like, yeah. And you always have to be nice.
Yeah. Totally. Like, yeah. And I think if anything to that point, like, I think there were some times where I was like, should I have gone harder to the paint on this? Like, I don't think I ever really felt like, I think if there was stuff where like, I loved that job, the stuff that we talked about. Like, I think reality TV and people and the way that they like interact, and like Anne and I talk about this all the time about how it's like, it is like so much of it is like hilarious, stupid bullshit, like women in pilgrim costumes, like calling each other like silly cunts, or you know what I mean, like stuff like that. But
Housewives of Salt Lake City.
Yes, also, I'm so sorry. I hope we are allowed to swear. I went hard with the C word. That's not a tester swear. That's
we got potty mouth. Sorry.
Exactly. So I think it's like, of course, there's like the silly bullshit to reality TV, but like so much of it is it's like we're talking about psychology and the way people like treat one another, and so I think with that stuff, because I feel really interested and opinionated on it, like, I don't think I ever felt super intimidated. It was more just like, how do I do this in a way that's like approachable? And I think like having disagreements with people, or like just not even like disagreement, but just where you're coming from different viewpoints, like doing so in a way that doesn't like shut someone down and make them feel like a huge moron, I think is something that I've been thinking about a lot.
You also always have like respect for the other person when you're countering an opinion. Yeah. Which I think is very important.
Totally.
When having like any discussion that might be a little prickly.
Yeah.
Were you doing the show when all the Rachel Lindsay, Chris Harrison stuff went down?
Yes.
I'm interested in how that went, because I know how I felt about it and doing a show. So I had a black co-host at the time, Angel Lakita Moore, who I love. And it was really interesting. And she was kind of new. It hit like all the racism accusations and the sort of come to Jesus about that stuff happened when my co-host was kind of new. And I was like, I'm so sorry that I brought you into this show. Like, and you now have to be the black woman's voice,
Right.
But it was really interesting. Like, we played the interview. Like, I mean, I found it appalling. And I'm wondering how, I don't remember where Nick fell on, like, it was, I felt, do you remember what we're talking about? Where Chris Harrison was like, was it racist or was it just like, was it 2018? But remember how Chris Harrison
was
like
really snarky and condescending, saying her name, what was it, Rachel? He was just being such a dick.
Yeah, because I think so much of it is like there's nuance in there's some of it where it's like, nah, this is just racist, or like the debate I think is like very one-sided, but then there is also this element of like, part of it is the way that you're like at this woman's place of work where she is tasked with being poised and pleasant and polite, and you're speaking to her in ways that infuriate me, and I'm a white woman who doesn't deal with this. So, to
catch people up really quick. Basically, Matt James was the bachelor that season, and Rachel Kirkconnell was the one that he ended up picking. But some stuff came out where she'd posed in some plantation party attire, and there were like a couple of other things. Like, it's nothing nothing over the top. Like, you could argue that maybe she really didn't know better, and nobody was saying Rachel Kirkconnell is an awful racist. We weren't canceling Rachel Kirkconnell. I don't know why I just said me, like I had anything to do with it. But the point was that Rachel Lindsay was having to kind of speak up for a lot of what Black people felt, and as the first Black bachelorette, and she was being asked about it, and Rachel basically was having an interview with Chris Harrison, who, when all this stuff came out, was kind of talked. And the problem wasn't even having a nuanced conversation about it. It was that he was not interested in having a nuanced conversation. He was basically being accusing her of not showing Rachel Kirkconnell any grace, because, you know, Rachel was like, it sucks. It was not a good look. And he was like, was it not a good look
in 2007
or in and she's like, it's just never a good look. So like, what would I be at the plantation party? Like, I would be the slave, basically. And then Chris Harrison just was not hearing it, shut her down, didn't listen to her. And Rachel Lindsay was so calm and collected and did not really argue back with him. And then they ended the interview, and I think she felt shitty. And apparently Chris Harrison called her or texted her right after and was like, I thought that went great.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And Rachel Lindsay was like, okay, hold on, you'll see. And people went nuts. But I'm so wondering, like, that was a huge blow up. And then Chris Harrison lost his job. And I'm sure Nick had some loyalty also to Chris Harrison. Like, how did he handle it? And how did you feel?
Well, I think it's interesting because The Bachelor is a show, I think, when you see the way that it's just like so unifying of like how wide the demographic is, where it's like you have the Southern girlies who are probably watching this being like, fuck, I went to a plantation party. I went, my sister did, whoever else, or like, I don't know. And I think to the issue at the core of it, that was an area where I was like, even though I'm very adamantly like pro Rachel Lindsay and her entire outlook on it, like I do wonder the degree to which I can condemn Rachel Kirkconnell, like from a place of, I was really protected from that stuff. I grew up in Boston. I had like in a really progressive family. Like I was never going to be at that party. So it's like there definitely was an element of like, I was very interested in like, how do we have a conversation about like, for people who aren't educated, and we can all say it's so fucked up and wrong that they're not educated, but the situation is people aren't educated. So like, how do we address that? Like I do, you know, there were some areas where it was just like a very nuanced thing, and you're talking to this fan base where there's like such fervor on both sides, kind of politically and socially. And so I think something that I learned a lot at the Viall Files that I would not have done is like, I think if I were to do a show, it would be, I'm sure people would say it was political because of the way that I would like talk about stuff, my attitudes or takes on things. And I think
just a warning, people get real mad.
They get real mad. They get real mad.
Yeah, they go, shut up. I don't listen to this show to hear about your politics.
Right.
It's interesting.
It's so interesting.
But so much politics is like woven into reality TV.
I agree.
How can you not talk about it?
Into reality TV, into our own families. Like, you know, there are things that we need to talk about that other people deem as political that are about our lives.
Yes.
So like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And
it's a reflection of current times. You know, so we need to talk about it.
Yes.
And I think that's the way a lot of people on maybe like a different kind of political leaning than myself feel, or like a sentiment that I hear is like, well, can't we just have pure entertainment? Can't we just have fluff? Like, can't this not be related to politics? And it's like, no, because there's people who are dealing with these deeply ingrained systems, and these systems reach to these areas. So that's why we're talking about it now. We're not saying you're never allowed to have fun and like everything needs to be political, but like, it's just a part of this. It's relevant.
But I think it's interesting. I think I want to hear, like, I would tune, even though I'm watching a stupid show like The Bachelor, like I would tune into, you know, Nick's podcast to hear his take on, not to condemn Rachel Kirkconnell at all, but to hear about like, but what did you think about that interview? Like to me, the problem was Chris Harrison interviewing Rachel
That was
Lindsay.
the-
Not
Yeah.
That was
Rachel
a
Kirkconnell.
huge issue. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
we don't empathize with the racist ideals. Like, you can empathize with like a person who's, you know, naive and then realizes, oh, what I did was racist. Just call it racist. Like, just say, hey, that was really shitty. Like, you know, and then allow the BIPOC woman to speak, you know, and listen to her instead of being like,
You're being difficult.
Yeah.
Like, is the undertone of that. So, yeah, I think it. But then, so as much as like for me, I'm like, okay, like I like so agree with that. And like, there's ways that I would discuss it that would probably feel political. I did see kind of firsthand, like, oh, it's interesting how I think that like Viall Files had listeners across, like from all over the political spectrum. And to me, there's something interesting about being able to conduct a show in a way where you're still getting that spread as opposed to echo chambers. And like, I don't have an answer on like, you know, if it's to what extent you're compromising ideals and values by trying to kind of speak in a way that doesn't ostracize certain groups of people. But I do think it is interesting to think about like, oh, okay, well, if you're having a conversation in a way that keeps both sides engaged, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that just interested me. I don't think I'm not like, oh, that's the best way to do it, because I do think I'm just inherently maybe a little bit more. There's certain stuff where I'm like, I don't think I can entertain this and be like, well, both have good points.
Right,
or it's like, well,
right.
I don't think both have good points
Yeah.
for certain issues, but like it is. I don't know. I do think there is value in spaces where at least you have people who disagree who are still consuming the same stuff, as opposed to these like terrifying Facebook group echo chambers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
and also you're always going to offend somebody.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
with
Right.
your opinion.
Yeah.
You're always going to have somebody that's like, you shouldn't be having an opinion about this because you don't know. And it's like,
No
okay.
matter what it is about. Like, it could be about your opinion about your friends, your family, your politics, whatever. Everybody's going to have an opinion. And like, I don't know, if we do a podcast, you guys do a podcast, the best thing is just to ignore. I know it's hard,
Yeah.
especially you guys are young, but like, I try not to read all the negative comments and
Yeah.
stuff because then it's gonna get to your
Yeah.
head, and then it'll like affect how you conduct yourself.
I'm so bad about that though, because I like have this like Bambi naive like idea that obviously some people are like miserable hags. Like, and I say that gender neutral. In fact, a lot of the hags are men out there, but like some people are just like saying shit. But I also like sometimes I read comments that are negative that like I find thought provoking. And like, you know, especially on the Viall Files, some of the negative comments, it's like, well, you know, maybe I did say stuff and it didn't make the final cut of an episode. Like maybe, you know, this criticism doesn't feel entirely fair, but like sometimes it's like, I feel like feedback is so important. And I think both of us coming from an improv background, like you can tell when the audience is
Right.
with you. And so I
Yeah.
think even though I know that it is like probably damaging to like your creativity, there's also a part of me that's like, but of course I want to incorporate how others are
Right.
thinking about this and like, of like just be humble enough to evolve.
yeah,
I
it's
guess.
a fine line to walk.
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I think I'm sure I'm going to read one comment that's going to be like, I'm out. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to think about this every day for the next 10 years. Like,
Well, you guys are. I want to ask you guys about improv, but we got to take a quick break.
Okay.
and we'll come back.
I feel like Anne has been
Yeah.
trying to say something for
Sorry.
a while.
Oh no! I was just gonna say earlier. Let's see if I can remember what I was gonna say. But then the next Bachelorette is gonna be an Asian American woman. It's the first Asian American woman on the Bachelorette.
Yes.
like, as a Bachelorette, and how could that not be political? You know what I mean? Like, and like for her, it's probably a lot of pressure representing. To this audience, every Asian American woman, like single, trying to find marriage. And it's like incorporating, I come from, my dad's white, my mom's Asian. And it's like interracial couples. When you meet the parents, it's gonna be a new experience to, the American audience who's not used to interracial, coupling and marriages. So it's going to be part of the discussion no matter what, So
I have a question for you regarding that.
Yeah.
Because my co-host on my show, Rose Pricks, we just did a cast roast, we call it. We went through all of her men that she has
Okay.
so far, and they only gave her one Asian guy. And I thought
so
that was
interesting.
weird because
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I'm not saying that she has to be with an Asian guy, but
Yeah.
like if she's the first Asian bachelorette, isn't it weird to be like, but we're not really into Asian guys? Like here's one.
Yeah.
Like one token.
Yeah.
Like wouldn't you think it would be normal that you'd have a few?
right.
Yeah.
Like there's
They have a lot of
30
African American
contestants?
guys. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. It was so weird to me and my co-host.
And like
Yeah.
statistically on dating apps, Asian men and black women are like the least swiped on groups. Like these are the people who are most like discarded by the population as a whole.
Interesting.
And I think there's
Sad.
like,
Yeah.
I'm sure like many people who are like better educated or who are Asian men who could speak to this experience so much more than me. But I do think it's like, yeah, you see these like parallels of society where it's like, oh, we're like, dude, there's some fucking hot Asian guys out there.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, it's pretty crazy that
Right.
they couldn't like find,
Yeah.
like how many people applied for the show and like
Yeah.
they still didn't have a cast and like, I don't know.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
so many Asian cultures and countries too. It's like
That's
you
true.
can't just have one token. That's
Totally.
crazy to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That is so interesting. I noticed that I was watching Perfect Match. Do you guys watch Perfect Match?
I haven't
I haven't
yet.
watched this most recent
you seen
season.
it?
I had not yet.
I just binged 2 seasons. I have young kids who
Okay.
are very into that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I did notice a thing with the black women getting kicked out first. Like they were not the hot commodity. And I was like, this
I
is
hate
so
that.
sad.
Yeah.
And it's almost every time. Almost every time the black woman is the one who ends up eliminated. And I was like, this is uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah.
It's so like once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And like I
Yes.
think that's why like sometimes there's just like criticism, I think, from the right of this like this conspiracy theorist almost like you're being a conspiracy theorist, and it's like no, literally watch the show. Like even like this most recent season of The Bachelor, I felt like Rachel, the woman of color who made it the furthest, like I just felt like her love story was less fleshed out. Like I think you see
Completely.
this like systemic, even if there are women of color who make it further on in the show, they're systemically under like princess affected and like they just get less confessionals and talking, and yeah, it's like it's across all reality TV shows. Like when you
Right.
just look for it, you see it. It's not that hard.
I haven't seen a white lead pick a black contestant, basically. I mean, I haven't seen that. I've seen the black lead, Charity picked Doughton.
Yeah.
Doughton, not Doughton.
Doughton.
Yeah, but she over Joey, but still that's the reverse. That's the black male. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you don't really see the white guy. You see sometimes the black women get far, but like you said, they're not picked.
Yeah.
Hasn't happened.
And I remember the first time, like, because there was conversations about this, like, you know, amongst the fans. But the first time it was mentioned on the show, I was like, yes, let's talk about it. Like, finally, like, this needs to be brought up. And I was glad that became part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But people don't want to talk about it.
People don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
So tell us about how you guys met, right?
Well, yeah, I wanted to know about, how did you guys meet? And also about are you guys both in improv now?
Yeah. We are women in improv.
Which improv?
Salute.
Yeah, that's how we met.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, doing
Which
Upright
improv?
Citizens Brigade, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
I
there's
actually, I've performed there a few times. I have never paid for the UCB classes.
Oh, you haven't?
Yeah, I paid for IO in Chicago and loved it, but it's just $600, you know, and then you do 5 of them. And it's like, for maybe you'll be like one of the 300 graduating people who gets on a T, like, which Anne was. So like power to her.
Right.
And that's amazing. But yeah, we actually met through like more of the people who like, I think like UCB has become this pipeline for like people who are like, I would like to be on Saturday Night Live and write for The Simpsons. And so it's become like so much more like, I think like a industry pipeline as opposed to like a weird little freaky creative community. And I think as a result, there's new weird little freaky creative improv communities, and Ann and I like met through one of those, but then did actually
we did do shows together through that at UCB.
Yes.
And then that's how we became closer and closer. It was like doing shows. We would get cast in the same shows together and it would be like, oh, I love you. Yeah.
And then you started talking and realized that you both are assistants, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, like support staff in the reality TV world.
Yeah.
Like, was just like, oh, damn. Like, we both have this, like, real, like, up close view of what reality TV is like for its subjects. And it was so interesting and complicated, and it was so cool to find someone who, like, was, I think,
got it immediately.
Yeah. And who, like, aired on the side of compassion. Like,
Yeah.
It
was important.
totally.
And we lived across the street from each other.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So Amanda, you're from Boston, and where are you from, Ann?
Tokyo, Japan.
Really?
Oh,
Born and
really?
raised, yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
son
yeah.
is going to Tokyo in a couple weeks.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Second time he's going. He loved it.
What a
Yeah, I
dream.
love it. Yeah. Well, do you know what part of Tokyo he's going?
I don't know.
It's okay. It's a huge city. It's
I know. There's
humongous.
all these different, what do they call them? Regions.
Yeah.
But they're called something else. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm brain farting right now, too.
It starts with a K. I know that. Could be anything. But,
Yeah.
So you grew up there? Then
I did.
When did you come here?
I came here when I was 18.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But my dad's American. He was a diplomat for the U.S. Embassy. So he worked at the U.S. Embassy in Japan, and my mom's Japanese. And so I had like a very both cultures involved in how I grew up. Like I went to an American school in Japan, but it's definitely like Japanese American community. So.
Was Japanese your first language, though?
You pretty much. Well, I think both was my first language, but definitely like my dad was still in the Navy when I was born, so he would go out, travel for a couple weeks and come back, and then I think when I was like 1 or 2 years old, he was like, you know what, I want to be closer to my family. So
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you just decide to move here on your own when you were 18?
No, well, because I have, because of my dad, I have like U.S. citizenship, and my parents pretty much like raised me to have a U.S. College education. Like they really wanted me to have my college education in America, and that's kind of why I went to an American school in Japan. So I feel like, I don't know, I just was like, yeah, my parents planned this for me. I guess this is what I'm doing. Yeah.
And then, so how did you get hired on for Tom? Like, how did that go down? Was it like TV interview, real interview? Tell us the story.
Yeah. I was working at the Greek Theater, and because I, would do acting and shoot commercials and stuff and small TV roles. And so I had enough confidence after booking a few things where I needed a job where I could like audition during the day and then work at night, or like if I had a show at UCB or wherever, I could like take that day off. So I worked at the Greek Theater, which was great. I loved working there. But then COVID happened, and then all concert venues shut down. So I really needed a job. And I posted on Facebook like, hey, these are the things that I've been an assistant. I've done this and that. If you know of any opportunities, let me know. Mutual friend of me and Ariana's, a comedian, was like, oh, I actually do know someone who needs a personal assistant. And I was like, great. So I applied, and one phone interview later, I got the job.
Oh, just a phone interview?
Wow.
Oh, because
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you immediately passed the vibe check.
Oh,
They're like,
thank
oh
you.
yeah, she's a sweetheart. Let's get her in.
Also being vouched for, like, the mutual friend is like, knows me very well, knows Ariana very well. So I was like, oh, this works out.
So did you know right away that it would involve being on the show?
No. Yeah, no. The intention was for me to not at all be on the show, and that's how I was like, great. Like, at the time, I was very like afraid of the concept of reality TV. Like I loved watching it, but if you like fart and step and poo or whatever, you're gonna be the poo girl for the rest of your life. Like,
right.
There's that. It's stuck in my head, so. And your boss is the star. Like that's who you're working for. It wasn't until the scandal and everything that happened where it kind of became this odd necessity to have someone for him to like talk to, because I think none of the cast members really wanted to be the soundboard for his feelings. So it just kind of made things a little easier to have his assistant there. It's like a built-in person it makes sense for him to talk about his feelings too.
So did production come to you and say, hey, we want to shoot this scene with you and Tom, like Tom talking to you about what's going on?
Yeah. Plus the go-between element, I think the audience was really curious about, and they want to know how that worked. So it was like with that and the and the emotional, being the emotional soundboard, that's kind of why, and it made enough sense where I was like, oh, I'll probably just do like one thing, no one's gonna know. Because like I'm watching Real Housewives of New York right now, and Bethany's assistant, pops in, but it's definitely like Bethany's assistant just like sitting in front of the computer, and then Bethany talking about like, oh, this happened, and she's like, wow, that's crazy. So I thought I was just gonna be there going, wow, that's bananas.
Are you getting her, by the way, on your show?
I would love to. If you're listening, hi.
Any assistance?
Yeah, please reach out to us.
Yeah, so that's what you thought it would be.
Yes.
And then your role got bigger.
Yeah.
I mean, you're pretty much beloved at this
point.
point.
Thank you. Oh my God.
Don't you think?
I hope so.
Yeah, people
I
love you.
Bravo in the audience. So yeah, it's like, being like, oh, what a cool club. Like I read I follow all the Instagram accounts, like Bravo Investigator and Reality Ops and all of them, and I love them. So like kind of being in the, like now a voice in the club is like very exciting to me.
Oh, that's cute.
So tell us like what you can. I know you signed an NDA, but like when things were going down with Tom and like towards the end this last season, what was he really getting annoyed that you were talking to Ariana? Like, I mean, they showed some kind of tension.
Yeah. There's definitely, I can say there was definitely tension. That NDA won't let me go into any specifics.
Right.
But yeah, what you see on the show is definitely there.
True to form.
I feel like as a viewer, so like just kind of speaking from like everything, lawyers, from what has been aired on national television. Like, I think you could kind of see like, I think to Tom, this, like, it seemed his perception was very much like, how could this be done to me? Like yet another person raging against me in this like horrible pile-on of everybody hating me kind of thing. Like it seemed like for him, it was just very much like, it was just a huge bummer. And he felt like, I think he was like very much viewing it through the eyes of like, well, why would an assistant want to spite me like that? But I think it's like when you see like, Anne in her interview with Ariana, she's like you can just see they get along really well. And she's like, I would love to work for like a female focused business. And I think when you see something about her, like it is like, I think a lot of the attention comes from the fact it's by these like reality stars, but it's an awesome business idea.
Yeah.
Like sandwiches have like it's so fun to be like, let's create this like feminine flair element to it. Like it's just a good business plan. They make good food. And like, I think it's so valid for Anne to be like, as someone who's the go-between between these two people, like, there's just one that I connect with more, and it makes a lot of sense when you're in any other industry. If you have a client who you really connect with, it's not that weird to then eventually like maybe pursue a business venture with them down the line. And so
makes
I think
sense.
I think in the show it's framed as this like big personal betrayal, but I think when you like are like, no, but this is Anne's real life, this is her career, this is her job. Clearly it was a really intense job, and there was an opportunity that was just a better fit. Like,
working for like a female, like, it celebrates women and it takes, like, I know how do I say this? Like the sandwich industry, like it is like a male kind of driven world, you know, where it's like Fat Sal's,
Jersey Mike's,
Jimmy John's, like
so few dudes.
like
I know.
where you're like that. There is a point to this, like
Subway's maybe non-binary, but apart from that, it's like it's a male-dominated industry.
Never thought of that. It's so true.
It is. It's all guys.
Why can't it be Jersey Michelle's? Like, why, you know,
Literally.
ladies love a sandwich.
Yeah, it's an
Exactly.
interesting take. It's an interesting point of view, and to use that as a means to celebrate femininity sounds amazing to me. And you know, just having a shop, a place where it's like it feels safe to just be as feminine as you want, you know, or as non-feminine as you want. Like, I think it's a wonderful thing. Like food in my culture, like food is a way of showing love and, you know, and getting together. And so, you know, showing love to women and having a place where we could always get together no matter what is like, that sounds
That's awesome.
amazing.
Yeah.
But besides that, I think Tom seemed like a bad person to work for. I mean, I'm just saying. like
you
your
saying
job,
that,
that's me saying that from watching the show. I was like, that just seems like this just anything seems like a better deal than like picking up after Tom Sandoval and listening to him whine and be a victim.
Rough. I can say it got rough towards the end after the scandal dropped. It was definitely a rough environment.
Yeah, it's very
that's safe to
emotionally
say.
intense.
Yes.
And like,
Well, yeah, I bet.
I
Especially,
mean, might I say toxic?
well, and especially like all the news surrounding it. I mean, my God, it's almost on CNN scroll, you know, at the bottom, like everybody was talking about it.
I also, you know, I do have a condition. I was diagnosed with PTSD, and, you know, being in a very stressful work environment like that isn't conducive to my mental health. So definitely like the opportunity to work for not just like another job where, you know, I don't have to like worry about my disorder, but also like something that I'm really interested in. It just seemed like the right way to go.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Let's take another quick break. We'll be right back.
And we're back.
Yeah. So, tell us more about the podcast.
Yeah.
So you're interviewing like assistants, and are they all people who have also signed an NDA? Like, how do you get around? So you're just talking about like assistant life.
Yeah.
Tell us more about the vibe of the show.
Yeah. It's a mix of people who signed NDAs and people who haven't signed NDAs. So that's really fun. You know, I think we both know what it's like to have signed an NDA and, you know, talk about things without talking about things. So I feel like people who have signed an NDA are comfortable when coming on the show, and we make sure that they know that anything that they don't want to say, anything that they want cut out is cut out. Like they get to steer the ship.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to say that what I love about your show, because I listened to many episodes, was that you guys, even though you signed an NDA, you're very like open with your opinions. None of it is like, well, I can't even talk about that. Because you were talking about breaking down the episodes of Vanderpump, and it was really fun. It was like listening to like Nick break down episodes of The Bachelor. Like I felt like we were getting some inside baseball stuff, but still like and funny. You guys are very funny and personable, but it was like fun to listen to get that your angle on what you're seeing on the show. So they don't hold back.
Right. No, I know. And then and you guys had interesting guests too. Like, is it hard getting some of these people to come on the show? Do they get intimidated about talking about their jobs and stuff?
Yeah, I think especially people like I feel a lot more comfortable talking about like past roles than like present roles. And I think because it's an industry that's so reputation based and so, like, I think for so much of your career, until you have your own like cultural capital, star power, whatever it is, like you're trying to find people who will continue to vouch for you and continue to employ you. So I get that it's like it can feel really vulnerable, even if like you're not going to say anything negative. I do think there's a way where like assistant support staff, like anybody who works with high profile people, like a big part of the role is trust and being like, I'm not going to spill your shit on the internet. Like, I'm going to respect your privacy. And so I think doing the show in a way that like upholds that end of the bargain, where it's like, of course we don't want to get sued. I also like, it would feel really morally wrong to be like, airing stuff that people trust us with. Even if it was like some secret thing that was kind of unenforceable, like that would feel shitty. Conversely, I think it's crazy no one's done this before because Hollywood assistant support staff, like, you know the fucking tea. You know, like, and it's so interesting, like, just like when I first moved out here and my first roommate here was an assistant at one of the major agencies here. And just like hearing about her day and just like the culture there and like the way various celebrities emails and also just like casting director politics, like just understanding how it all works is so interesting. And it's insane that nobody has like passed the mic to assistants before this, because it's like, you know, it's like when we see news stories, like, of course, some of it is like just like the pop culture fan reactions, but some of it is like, oh my God, like their PR team must have done XYZ, like their assistant, like you just kind of like, once you know how things work a little bit more, it like, it's just like you interpret it differently. And so I think the premise was being like, oh, other people who have like kind of seen the way this machine operates, like it's not even about spilling the secrets about their firsthand experience. It's about like the insights they would apply to any new situations, having just understood this system better.
Yes.
I don't know why this metaphor popped up in my head. It's going to be bizarre, so just try to follow along. Maybe you might have to cut this out because it doesn't make any sense. But like I remember going to what is it, like the MGM Studios when I was a kid, like the Disney tour, and seeing the Golden Girls house and being like, oh my God, it's the Golden Girls house. And then you realize that behind the house is just a propped up wall. Like it's just like beams and there's no house, there's no living room. You're just seeing like a facade, and assistants like get to see behind that and like what is real and what's not. And I think that's like very important. Plus, on top of that, personal assisting is a bizarre job if you think about it. Like I remember when I first came to LA and being like, that's a job? Like you just hang out with like a celebrity and get their groceries and stuff? Like that's bananas.
It's like you do like the 50% of life that like nobody wants to fucking do. Like nobody wants to answer those emails. Nobody wants to register their car at the DMV. Like nobody wants to do that. And so it's like, and for someone who's incredibly busy and in a financial position where they can have someone else do it, they're gonna do that. And then in all of these like intimate everyday moments of life, you get such an insight into people's world.
Oh yeah. I had a friend that was a personal assistant to let's just say it's a house, one of the housewives, there's throughout all the years, there's a billion of them. But one of the housewives' husband. At first she started as the assistant to the wife, but then she just kind of migrated to the husband. And then they ended up getting a divorce, but she would find herself being like, because she was cute and attractive, she'd have to go meet him across town to drop him off stuff, and then, or he doesn't drive anywhere, so she would have to drive him to the restaurant and to the bar. And then it's like, she's like, but I don't want to end up on reality tea, you know, and be like, oh, you know, this is so-and-so's dating his new hot, you know, because it was like, so she was like, hated that part of it. But yet, you know, there was a rewarding side because she got to know the kids, and then she was like really close with the family and stuff like that. But then there's just like, you know, it's just it's a crazy job. Yeah, it's a crazy job.
Has there been anything that like from kind of doing the podcast and just like generally like putting work in the media and being creative people and in showbiz, like what were some of the biggest like revelations that you had once you like entered the fray of like, oh, people really don't understand that this is a reality of how things work, like in showbiz?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
I think people in show business are bigger assholes than anybody really knows. And we've talked about this a lot, where I just think that people behind the scenes, when people get famous or get power, they tends to go to their head, and they tend to feel like they can treat people any way they want. And then a lot of yes, we talked about this a lot. I knew somebody who worked on Ellen's show. I was very, very close to somebody. And many years before anybody knew that Ellen was impossible to deal with, I knew several people that worked on the show and heard horrendous stories. And it was always crazy to me. And Lynette and I would talk about it on the show. I think we would do Patreons about it, where I was like, okay, you're not going to believe this thing that I heard, because that she did. One of them was it was during the primary. It was when Obama was running against Hillary in the primary to be the
2008.
No, was it 2008?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, 2008. And they're supposed to get equal time. And Ellen basically had Hillary on, and then when she had Obama on, she made him wait. She completely was a diva about it. He was at a national convention. He was trying to make it work. He was like, no problem, I will juggle my schedule. Because she was like, no, you can only do it at this time, and I will not wait. So he was like, okay. So he figured it out. He had all these like 10,000 people waiting while he was supposed to be appearing like over, Zoom, however, remotely on the show. And then she, on purpose, just made him wait. She was just like, she started going like, does the audience have any questions? And my friend was like appalled. She was like, it was the weirdest, awful, awkward thing. And she was doing it on purpose and using her power anyway. And she for real had a thing where like, you can't make eye contact with her. A lot of the things that came out later.
That's Obama, by the way. Imagine how she must treat the other just
people that work.
The writer's PA or whoever.
Yes.
I mean, like really, really, really awful, and just fired people constantly that just pissed her off. Like was just like, I want her out. Fired friends, like people that had worked for her for a long time, would tell somebody else to go fire them, and then be like, how'd they react? Like she was a nightmare.
Yikes.
And and I would hear this stuff and be like, but everybody had signed, like no one was allowed to say anything. So I was hearing it all on the DL. But when finally somebody was brave enough to come out, it was like, yeah, of course. We've all known this for years.
Yeah.
I think that would be the thing that Lynette and I are privy to.
Yeah.
People telling us behind the scenes, like how awful some people are and no one's allowed to know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. There's so many people like just doing comedy for so long of like this, like just underground whispers of like, don't be alone in a room with this person. Don't, I wouldn't work with that guy. Like so much of it. And it's shocking and it's weird because it's like, it's become common knowledge, and then when it does come out, like you're expecting it has to come out at some point, and then when it finally does, you're like, oh my god, like that's also shocking that someone was like brave enough to finally say something. And we talk about
the Louis C.K. stuff we knew about that. I was a comedian. We knew about that for years. Yep. Like that was like the worst kept secret, and then
worst kept secret. The other thing too is like when we were coming, Stefanie and I were coming up in the TV world and all that, there was no social media, Twitter, Instagram, nothing, even iPhones really. And so it was very easy for people to get away with this behavior. And now it's like you get more and more people are getting more and more brave, with the Me Too and all that, plus social media. And it just, it's hopefully, I don't know, getting a little better, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping
there's always
going to
be assholes.
There's always going to be assholes.
This is why you have to sign NDAs, though.
Yeah,
right.
We talk about that all the time.
If people would behave better, they wouldn't need everybody to sign an NDA.
Exactly.
To not expose their shit.
Right.
It like started out as this idea to protect like copyright, like your
intellectual property.
Yes, thank you. And then like, as all good things are ruined by bad people, like it became this like tool to protect bad behavior, which shouldn't be the norm.
Yeah. And you also, and like to that point, like it's like, the goddamn grifters, like, because there is 1% of the population that, as assistants, like maybe would do really egregious violations of privacy and trust, and that would suck. Yeah. And like, so it's like you, on one hand, you do see how celebrities could get done really dirty by like letting the wrong people in, and like the way they must be super guarded and jaded. Like, there's also like those kind of fringe people who like ruin it for I think the other maybe hardworking folks who are like, I'm not trying to do anything crazy, but please don't abuse me. Like, like it's just like a complicated thing. And like, it's interesting, like when you were saying about Louis C.K. and like, it's so funny because I feel like so much of cancel culture is framed as it's like you make one mistake, one strike, and you're gone. But it's like when we hear these stories, it's like they made 10,000 mistakes and they still weren't gone.
They were blatant. Most of these people are blatant with their behavior, and then they finally somebody outs them. Yeah, and it's like, oh my gosh. poor Louis, he asked for permission to masturbate in front of one girl. Like, no, that's not really
not
how it was
how
going
to-
down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, like, oh God. Like, think about fielding that request, folks. Like, literally think about fielding that request. That's insane.
I mean, the people that are so anti-cancel culture, I'm like, it's called consequences.
Yes.
I understand. We're not trying to come after you for making one slip up or using the wrong pronoun. Nobody's doing that to you. Nobody's canceling you because you use somebody's the wrong pronoun. Now, if all you do is like shit on trans people and constantly use the wrong pronoun, yeah, there's going to be consequences to that.
Like
People are
J.K.
gonna find
Rowling,
out.
you didn't one time misgender a trans person.
Right,
Like, you
right.
had a slew of unprovoked
You've
tweets.
made it your whole personality to go against the trans
Yeah.
community. It's
Yeah.
not so. I mean, yes, it's not. It just makes me so mad when people are like, you can't say anything. It's like, you can say anything. You can say a lot of things. Nobody's going to cancel you off of making one little mistake.
Yeah.
Right. And especially like, it's like this idea of like, oh, well, if I've made the mistake, the consequences are so huge that I can never admit that I've made the mistake. When it's like, I don't know. I just think like, I was wrong. I fucked up. My bad. Like, I know we make a lot of fun of Notes apologies because there's like, seems so disingenuous, but like, I do think there is a more authentic way to be like, yeah, my bad.
Yeah.
Like, I fucked up. And then it doesn't need to be this like, as some people would probably feel, a witch hunt of this. Like, you can just be like, no, I did a little spell. Oops, I won't do it again. Like, you know?
Yeah. I also think that a lot of the people that a lot of people defend, like, oh, this poor person, cancel culture got him. But Louis C.K. is not canceled in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Louis C.K. is doing better than ever, which is fine. I'm not saying he shouldn't have a career. No, like it's up to me. But he does have a perfectly healthy career. Most of these comedians, tell me one comedian that's like never worked again.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't think of any.
Yeah.
Even Michael Richards is making a comeback.
Yeah. And the Michael Richards thing, by the way, wasn't just like he didn't use the N-word one time. He went crazy and had a complete racist meltdown. And yeah.
I feel like a big old dum-dum. Who's Michael
Kramer
Richards?
from Seinfeld.
Right. Yeah.
Years ago.
Yeah.
This was like at a stand-up show, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and they had audio of it.
Yeah.
I think I was listening to it's Too Far. It's a podcast that I really like, and they were talking about this, and it's like two queer Jewish women who like kind of run and like, but one of them is like jokes about having almost like, her name is Robbie Hoffman. She's so fucking funny. She has almost like a Trump like. She's so confident, and I do think she had some interesting takes where she was like, you know, okay, so you have this awful moment, and obviously it's inexcusable, never should have happened in the first place, so fucking harmful to people. Like, what does life look like after? And like, is there what do we want from people who like make these colossal fuck ups? Because like, I think what she was saying, and I don't know a ton about it, but she was saying like, he's been really quiet and remorseful for a really long time. And it just like, I think there's this interesting question where it's like, where we don't have the answers for like how to hold people accountable. And so and then there's just people on like, I think both extremes being like, it needs to be this way, and then everyone's like, that's not fair. Like,
I do think people make mistakes. I mean, my kids call me out on certain things. Like, I always thought it was perfectly acceptable to call somebody a butch lesbian. That's like in my conversations with butch lesbians, I was like, that's what they call themselves. Like, and my son was like really annoyed at me one time. He was like, we don't use that word anymore. And I was like, oh, we don't? Like, I got canceled by my kids many times. Yeah. Like, where I've been like, okay, but I didn't know. I wasn't like, it's intent. Like, it's intent.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They still love you anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't mean to be like a Michael Richards apologist at all. Or like, no, it's just, but it is.
No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, of course. Like, yes, people get caught on camera doing stuff, and maybe they're having a bad moment, but like, I guess we have to figure out the difference between, is Michael Richards out there on a daily basis, like calling people the N-word? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
if we see something bad happening, a bad action that hurts people, you have to call it bad. You just have to point at it and say, that's not right, that's racist, or that hurts people, or that's misogynistic. Like, just label it and then change it. Like if we appease it, then it's just going to keep happening. Like,
Right.
we need to stop the pattern of hate. Like that's the point.
Yeah, and to what extent are we like listening to the people affected, like on the receiving end of like hateful, horrible, racist behavior? Like to what extent are like those the people who are getting to rightfully determine the recourse and the action? Because I think there is also like, I think there's a lot of like white people who feel really guilty and are like, ooh, I'm a colonizer. Like I have all of this like discomfort, like especially like well-educated, liberal arts educated white people who are like, okay, so fuck, like yikes, bad stuff has happened. And I think sometimes this like discomfort and guilt with that manifests in like being like, well, I want to really condemn people doing the wrong thing because that's the way I'm gonna like sit with this discomfort. And of course it's so important for white people to like speak up, and like there's so many situations where it's not safe for people of color too, or like where they're just not in the room to speak up. So I'm not at all saying like of course white people need to speak up, but like I just think it's a really interesting dynamic of like, but to what extent are you amplifying a voice versus like kind of having this like reactionary, like I think this is what I should do to like alleviate my own feelings of guilt about this.
Yeah. BIPOC people have been like almost trained to tiptoe around that feeling of like, well, we don't want to serve to that discomfort. And it's like, wait, no, that sucks. Like we're realizing that now. It's like, as like a person, as an Asian American woman, like I should just live like without constantly thinking about like, well, am I making this other person uncomfortable? Am I making their whiteness uncomfortable? Like,
and we need to learn that, like having, you know, speaking with Black women who are constantly like, oh my gosh, I can't have any reaction to this. Otherwise I'm going to be labeled like angry.
Yep.
I mean, yeah. Well, and it doesn't help that now we're trying to take away critical race theory in schools. Like we're trying to make sure that nobody feels uncomfortable about anything. And like at the same time, we can't turn everything into a gotcha moment. Oh, we found out you're racist. Like, no, otherwise then people can't learn and make mistakes.
Yeah.
We didn't solve it, you guys.
I know.
I know.
We're just kind of diving deeper and deeper and being like, oh my God, this is an endless well.
Yeah. I'm like spiraling because I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, now you like the Florida education system and grocery store inflation. And like, I'm like, oh no, it's bad.
We're going to have you guys back. And
Yes.
that's
love that.
for
Yeah,
sure.
I feel like I like was so fucking blabby this whole time, but like I want to like hear more about. I just like it's so cool to like hear about like I don't know, just not like generation feels like a horrible way to say that, but just like
We're
people who
older
are like
than you.
10
Yeah.
years to like whatever amount like ahead. Like I'm so fascinated with like what the path was like.
Yeah, we get excited when two smart, you know, amazing women are in front of us. We just want to like,
You're like, how did you stick it out?
yeah.
Well, we'll be your mentors anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so tell us the podcast. We signed an NDA. What day does it come out? Give us the details.
Yeah.
Social media. Where do we find you?
We signed an NDA on Instagram. The podcast drops every Wednesday. It's like the first section is us usually talking about pop culture. We did a lot of Vanderpump recapping, kind of reality TV space, but then we always have a guest for an interview. So whether you're in it for like more reality TV goss or whether you're like, I want to hear, like we had someone who worked for Ellen as a writer on, like all these awesome folks.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have really cool support staff assistants who just like have these charming anecdotes about which celebrities fucking rock and the ways that people behave badly in Hollywood.
Wow. Yes. That's great. And where do we find you on social media? And each one of you want to plug?
Oh, yes. I'm on Instagram as Miki Ann Maddox, which is like my given Japanese first name, birth name. Ann Maddox was taken, so I just use that. It's MIKIANNMADDOX. And then we're on Patreon. Check us out.
Oh, nice.
Give us good, nice reviews.
Yeah, go to iTunes. Give you guys good reviews.
Yeah, if you want like
Apple.
a story post.
Sorry.
Yes.
What'd I say? iTunes.
Yeah. That's outdated.
Yeah.
Sadly, I still say it all the time. Okay, and We Signed an NDA is your
that's
handle
our own
for
Instagram.
Insta.
Yeah. And if you want to see me post once every 4 months, or occasionally go on a little spree, Lifford the Big Red Dog is like my personal Instagram.
Oh, cute.
Okay.
I love it.
Well, thank you guys
Thank you,
so
girls,
much.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank
We look forward
you
to having
so
you back.
much,
Thank
so
you,
much.
Kaylin.
Thank you, Kaylin.
Yeah.
I felt myself hand talking. I was like, oh no, am I ruining Kaylin's life?
You're all good.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.